don't get around to answering your question, myself or Terence will be back in touch with a written answer, and we'll email that back to you as soon as we can. As I said, this event is recorded. Each and every one that has signed up to this webinar will receive a link to that tomorrow, and it will be posted on YouTube. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed today's content. As I said, my name is Adam Hatton. Terence is our host, I guess, and we look forward to bringing you some really interesting content today. So, just a little bit about Transparency, if you don't already know us. We've just entered our 10th year, and on year one, we set out with one mission, and that was to be Microsoft's most respected partner in the UK. Currently, we class ourselves as the most accredited UK pure play partner. It's always difficult to say, which means we only do Microsoft. You know, there's no Google, no AWS, no Cisco, no VMware, etc. But what we have done is we've worked with Microsoft really closely with the new solutions designations. So what we've done is we've invested a lot of time, effort, money, and also upskilled a lot of our consultants to ensure that we are able to deliver on all of the new practice areas, as we call them, or the solution designations, as Microsoft calls them, around security, modern work, digital app and innovation, data and AI, Azure infrastructure, and business applications. We're also part of the Microsoft Intelligent Security Association, also Microsoft XDR deployment registered, and also an Azure Expert MSP. So I think in total, that puts us in the 0.15% of partners globally with that amount of them specific accreditations. So any Microsoft Cloud need that you guys do have, then we're more than happy to answer any questions outside of just your Copilot needs. Next slide, please. Over to you, Terence.
Thanks, Adam. So today's agenda is fairly short. We've only got another 40 minutes or so, and I want to allow some time for Q&A. So we're going to be talking about what Copilot actually is, how it works, how it can accelerate the digital workplace success, some prompting best practices, and a short section on how you keep control of what AI is doing. So some points here about what Copilot for Microsoft 365 actually is. So firstly, we need to understand that Microsoft has really gone to town with the Copilot brand name. And there are currently in excess of 100, I've heard actually in excess of 150 Copilots. And when you think about the fact that you can embed AI capabilities into pretty much any app. So we've got a Copilot for Word, we've got a Copilot for Excel, for PowerPoint. We've actually got 2 Copilots inside of Teams. It makes sense that across Microsoft product portfolio, we're getting Copilots for everything. What we're going to focus on in today's session is the bundle of Copilots you get in the Copilot for Microsoft 365 license. So this is a digital assistant. And I had AI generate these cute little cartoon images for us because I really want to establish in your minds this idea of actually having an assistant. And I think most of the folks on the call with us today, unless you're a director or a C-suite leader within an organization, you've never had a PA or an executive assistant. You might have, you might be a manager or a team leader and have people actually reporting to you, but you don't necessarily have experience of delegating almost all the tasks you can to someone else. And that's a mindset that we need to get into to be successful with Copilot. The next thing to understand about Copilot for Microsoft 365 is that unlike public generative pre-trained models like ChatGPT and other vendor products, Microsoft's Copilot works with your content and your context. So what I mean by context is it uses the Microsoft Graph to understand who you are, who you work with, who you attend meetings with, who you message and chat, who shares documents with you, who is in the same Microsoft teams as what you are, who reports to the same line manager, and so forth. All of this information is taken into account when Copilot decides how it is going to respond to a query. You ask it questions in natural language and it answers them in natural language, which is something which you've probably heard of before, but I want to show you some demos later to really bring that to life. One of the things I do want to establish really early on as a way not to give you false expectations is that Copilot is not an automation solution. So you cannot expect Copilot to be triggered by an event and go do something. It is instruction based, so you need to prompt it and tell it to go do something. And one of the favorite catchphrases Microsoft's given us is that it is a co-pilot, not an autopilot. So it won't do your job for you, but it will enhance your capabilities to do your job. So briefly, I just want to explain how it works. So we have the starting point within the suite of Microsoft apps we use. That's by no means comprehensive. We've got other things like Loop and Whiteboard, Planner, Forms. Some of those are in preview, but they really are rolling it out across the whole Microsoft productivity suite. So when you create a prompt and you send that prompt, the Copilot orchestrator or engine or whatever you want to call it will send your query to the Microsoft Graph. And the graph is that interconnected picture of who I am and what I do and who I do it with inside my organization. Very important to understand at this stage that everything Copilot does is security trimmed. So that means it will only pull data from the files that you have access to. The files need to be in the cloud. So we're talking about OneDrive, we're talking about SharePoint sites, we're talking about Teams, to a limited degree, email attachments in your mailbox. I'll mention a bit more about that later. But it's secure as long as your data is not overshared. That query, along with all of the relevant data that it found to support the query, is then submitted to the large language model. This is not public ChatGPT-4. It is a version of ChatGPT that sits inside of Microsoft data centers. The data that gets sent through from your tenant to Microsoft's large language model adheres to GDPR, adheres to the European data boundaries, and it is anonymized. So there's no personally identifiable information sent through to that large language model. The large language model is what breaks your query down and rebuilds it into a sensible, understandable set of data that comes through in English or whatever your supported language is. That doesn't go straight back to the user. It comes back. Sorry, I pressed the wrong arrow there. That comes back to Microsoft Graph for another round of what they call grounding. So that's again making sure it's adhering to all the security policies. So for example, if the source data that it pulled your information from has got a sensitivity label, a purview label on it that says this is confidential, then any document it generates as a result of that query, as it goes back through the orchestrator, that output document will be tagged with the same sensitivity label. So it is a 6-step process, which then returns the data to the app. That's about as technical as I want to get for now. I'm sure that there will be questions based on this, but we can answer them later. So now that we know what Copilot is doing, what does it actually benefit me? And the first thing that's been a bit of an eye-opener for me of working with Copilot is that it takes your ability to search to the next level. And to really take advantage of this, we've got to change the way we think about even doing search. So what I mean by this is an example. Typically, people will search for a document by putting in some keywords. So maybe I want to look up our Microsoft Partner Network ID. So I will put that keywords into my Microsoft 365 search, or my Teams search, or maybe a SharePoint search, and it'll come back with a list of documents. And then I will pick the most likely document from the list of results, and then I'll open the document and I'll read the documents. And what Copilot says is even that process, which for today is something people haven't even gotten used to, and Copilot's saying leapfrog a lot of those processes and just ask me, what is the partner ID? So I plug that into Copilot and I skip the whole process of picking from a list of documents and reading the documents, maybe doing, Control F to search the document content. And it just tells me the answer. So my query to Copilot is, what's a Microsoft Partner ID? And Copilot just tells me. I don't need to know what document it's in. That by itself is a significant time saver for me. The next superpower I think it has is it helps me overcome procrastination. And that ties into the third point about sparking creativity. But when I'm faced with that blank page, I need to write a blog for marketing. I need to write a report based on the outcome of a project. And I've got that blank page and I don't really know where to start. So what I do is I procrastinate. So I will find something else more important to do. And instead of that report being done the day after the project, it's now done 2, 3, however long, or the marketing blogs. And I know we've got Natalie from the marketing team listening in on the call with great interest, but I'm afraid that's what sometimes happens because you can't overcome that blank page, and so you procrastinate. So what Copilot's doing is helping me get started, and not only is it reducing the amount of time I spend actually writing the blog, it is also helping me actually get started and finish that blog sooner. So by cutting out the procrastination, we're looking at the turnaround time on tasks, the turnaround time on proposals, being able to deliver work more rapidly in a more agile way, which is really quite a significant benefit as well. So I've covered sort of the first 4 points there. It also helps me to summarize information. And those summarization capabilities sit across 2 main areas. The first one is, again, through the chat bot that I'll show you shortly, but it helps me summarize meetings, email threads, long back and forth chat messages. We don't have time sometimes to read through the detail of all of the stuff. So we've got this digital assistant that we can ask to do that laborious, tedious work for us. Summarizing documents and transforming documents as well. So that's particularly cool, which I'll show you in a demo later, is having, for example, a Word document that's a bit dry and boring and not very visually engaging. And I can just say to it, put it in a PowerPoint for me and make it more visually engaging. And the time that I save from transforming from Word to PowerPoint, again, I'm telling you, Copilot's paying for itself every day. And finally, we've got some analysis and visualization capabilities. Now, again, I'm going to be just really upfront with you about that. That is currently still in preview because mostly we're talking about Copilot inside of Excel. That is arguably the least mature of all of those capabilities. But for someone like me who is not an Excel power user, I don't really understand pivot tables. I only found out about slicers a few months ago, that being able to just talk to Excel in plain English and say things like illustrate the profit over the course of the year. I wouldn't really know how to do a chart to do that, but I can ask Copilot to do it for me. And it can do basic stuff like that. Well, I say basic, it's basic for Copilot, but I wouldn't normally be able to do it. So when you start adding all of these things together, you start building a picture where individuals can become more and more, and I almost don't want to use the word productive, because, well, that is what it is. But the promise of productivity improvement has been used so many times in the past, where if you now say to people, it's going to boost your productivity, they're like, yeah, of course it is. I mean, doesn't everything? All I'm saying is give this a go and watch this space, because overcoming procrastination, overcoming that blank page, cutting time to search, it's definitely working for me. Folks often ask, well, how do you actually talk to Copilot? How do you begin? So I've got some prompting best practices that, and again, you may be thinking, I see 5 LinkedIn posts every day telling me, these are the 50 prompts you have to try. And I don't want to do that again to you, because it's sort of in one ear and out the other. What I want to try show you, though, is in the structure of a prompt that you can be more successful. And this really aims to achieve 2 things. So firstly, it's illustrating that you need to be mindful of how you are delegating this task to Copilot. So you're putting some thought into what you want. Because if you just said, generate 3 to 5 bullet points, and you're not telling it why you need them, you're not telling it where to get the data from, you're not telling it how you want to do it, what you're going to find is that you need to refine your prompt several times over. You've got to ask it again and again and again. I mean, it's good that you can do that. You can have an ongoing conversation, and you can be saying, make it a bit less formal, make it a bit shorter. But if you just ask the right question the first time, then you're achieving even more efficiency and success and less frustration. So if we look at the column on the left, it gives you an indication of the kind of things you can ask it to do, like transform an FAQ, which is going to be stored in Word, arguably, into 10 PowerPoint slides, or generate executive summaries. These are all examples of things that I've personally found it to be really useful in my day-to-day role. But I think we should appreciate that it is quite an individual tool, in the sense that the person sat at the desk next to you, even if you're doing the same job, it depends on your working style. It depends on how your brain functions. So, for example, the email generation capabilities that I personally don't find myself using. And when I first got to grips with it, I thought, this is a bit pointless, because I know how to write an email. And then I thought about it some more, and I realized I'm kind of privileged to be an effective communicator. However, there are people who are just as smart as me, or smarter, who for some reason don't. They find it more difficult to find the words, and in some cases even maybe have a neurodiverse condition, maybe dyslexic. So for them to have a tool that will help them compose an email is invaluable, even though I might not find it that valuable. So it's very much a case of being on your own Copilot journey to discover what works for you and what doesn't. But either way, you have control over the AI and you have responsibility. So this manifests as a result of Microsoft's commitment to responsible AI. And there are just certain things the AI won't do. So, for example, if you ask it to take a job specification and then look at 2 CVs, and you can ask it whether or not the candidate is a good match by comparing the CV and the job spec. And it will do that for you in 15 seconds, 30 seconds. But if you ask it to compare 2 CVs and tell you who's the best person for the job, then it won't do that, because it's built in to the product under the responsible AI guidelines that there are certain things which should be done by humans. And so when we're looking at decision making that impacts people, it's designed to not do it. Excuse me. Another aspect in which we maintain control is the fact that the answers come from our data. So it's our email messages, our Teams postings, our files. And as I mentioned earlier as well, data is anonymized. The data is not used to train public models, and it complies with regulation like GDPR, EU data boundary, and so forth. Now, that's not to say that there's zero risk. As I mentioned before, there may be an issue with your data regarding oversharing. So I might have been put into a team in Microsoft Teams that was relevant to my job 6 months ago. But since then, maybe I got a promotion. And now I'm in a job role. That means I no longer have legitimate access to that team, but I'm still in that team because I've not been removed. So the content of that team is effectively being overshared with me. So we have a lot of capability in supporting customers to help them understand what their exposure to data risks like that looks like, and how to help them remediate those risks. There are many different ways, depending on your organization's security posture, your digital maturity, your baseline IT skills from your staff, to be fair, that we can help you understand and manage those risks. Just an asterisk point there, the SharePoint restricted search, available from the end of March onwards. So that's currently a feature that's in preview. And that brings us to the demos. So what I'm going to start with is a Teams chat. So I've gone into my Teams, I've gone into chat, and I've asked it to pop out that chat window. And I can then begin asking questions. So this is what I was referring to earlier when I said we've got search that's turbocharged. And I can ask it, for example, what meetings do I have tomorrow? So I was actually just watching Iron Man last night, and the way he kind of walks around and just hands people stuff and asks assistants to do stuff for him. We kind of need to get into that mindset where we're understanding that we can actually delegate tasks. So you can see here, I've now got a summary, and I didn't necessarily ask it to tell me who those meetings are with, but it has done that. And it's also given me little blocks with numbers. Now, these are links to the source of that answer. So it's gone into my calendar and it's seen that between 1 and 2, I've got my lunch break booked. If I then hold it over any one of these other ones, it's going to pop out and say, this is the meeting, these are the people you got the meeting with, and these are linked. So if I click that link, it'll open my calendar and show me. But what I've really done here is I've replaced the task of having to open my calendar and navigate to the date and then read it to understand. It just generated the summary for me. So that's one example. Another thing I can do is ask it about people in the organization. So this, for example, I think is really useful when you've got new starters. Or if you yourself are a new starter and someone says, oh, you've got to talk to Michelle. Like I know who Michelle is. I don't. So who is Michelle? And it goes away and it looks in the Microsoft graph. It looks at the data in my tenant and it comes back with people. So we are in a position where we've only got one person called Michelle, but if it was multiple people, then it would show me multiple contacts. So this is who Michelle is, what's her role, what's the kind of stuff she works with, who she reports to, and a link to Michelle's Microsoft 365 profile. Now let's try another question. And this is going to be an example of, I don't want to hunt through documents and then open the document and then look something up. I just want to ask a question. So I know I've got a document in here that refers to a company called Fabricam. It's Microsoft's fictional, one of the fictional companies. And I know that we've got a financial report somewhere, and I want to know what the EBIT for 2023 is. So rather than doing a classic search, which would have been to find the document, I can just get this answer from Copilot. And it's come back and it's told me, okay, your operating income, 66.5 million last year, 71.2 million this year, along with a link to the document that I can then open it and double check. And that is actually an important element of using Copilot, because remember, we're ultimately still responsible for this. Just like if I had an assistant and I asked that assistant to go do something for me, it's my responsibility to make sure that the work that they've turned around is actually correct. So there we've opened the document, and then I can scroll through and I can look at the data and I can confirm that Copilot has actually delivered that data correctly. Now that we're in Word, I want to show you how I can ask it to do an executive summary. So based on this fairly, if you don't have a head for figures, then this table is not going to be particularly useful. So I want an executive summary. So now that I'm in Word, and as long as this document is saved in the cloud, okay, so if it was on my C drive or my downloads folder, then Copilot won't function. Document needs to be in the cloud. And then I can either click the Copilot margin control, or I can open up the Copilot panel using the button there. But I'll just go ahead and say, please generate an exec. Well, actually, what I'll start with is just say I'll generate a summary. So it's going to have a look at the content of the document. And what you'll notice is if you're asking it a question and the data is not contained in the document itself, it will then go out and it will look at everything else you've got access to. So it's gone ahead and generated a summary which I can keep, or I can continue to prompt. So I can say make it formal, make it more optimistic, limit the number of words, make it longer. But I don't have to start from scratch to say make an executive summary, because I'm now having a conversation with a Copilot and it's retaining that context of what I've asked it to do previously. And we can just keep reiterating through this. But I think for those of you who have this kind of task as part of your daily job, and who also have that kind of blank page procrastination issue, you can recognize that this is going to be a significant time saver. And if you think about being able to save 10, 15, 20 minutes a day, and then think about the fact that, yes, the headline figure for Copilot is a bit scary, $30 a day. You've got to pay up front for a year. However, when you break that down to the number of working days per month, and you do the currency conversion, it's £1 a day. So think about having an executive assistant that you pay £1 a day, and how much time that assistant can save you. And I think for a lot of folks on this call, even just with that quick mental math, you're thinking for £1 a day, it's a no-brainer. Anyway, so I've now shown you how I can get it to summarize content inside of that document. Again, it's my responsibility to fact check what I've got here, and maybe fix some of the formatting. So it has, for example, regenerated the heading. I don't need that second heading, so I just go back down here and say keep it. So I could take out the extra text. Whoops, I can apply the right formatting. If you have corporate templates, it's always a good idea to actually open a blank Word document using the corporate template. And that's especially true with PowerPoint, as we'll see in a minute. So I just apply the right formatting there. So I'm, for the sake of the demo, I'm going to assume that everything is correct and happy and working there, and then I can close that document. What I want to show you next is in PowerPoint, and I'll use the desktop app this time. So it works equally well in the desktop app or in the web app. We'll open up PowerPoint on the desktop, but I'm going to go for one of my corporate templates, because if I just choose the generic template, I'm going to get all of the standard Microsoft fonts, color schemes, font sizes, formatting, all that kind of stuff. You should really think about reviewing your templates, doing the proper master slides, getting them published so that they're visible in your apps like this, so that folks can consume the proper templates easily. So I'll go for my generic template. It's got a bunch of stuff in which I'm not really worried about, because I am going to ask Copilot to create a presentation based on that market trend document. So when I was in Word, I just used the Copilot control in the margin, but now I'm actually opening the side panel. And what you'll see in PowerPoint, in Word, in Excel, that side panel has got some intelligence built into it. So it's actually already analyzed the presentation I've got, and it's suggesting some questions that I can ask, or it's suggesting some tasks. The one I want to do is create a presentation from a particular file. And what it's showing me on this list here are all of my recently accessed files. So I go straight for the one that I was working on earlier. If it wasn't on the list, I just begin typing the file name. Now, it will sometimes happen if you've only recently created that file, that the search engine hasn't had a chance to index the file yet, in which case you can just go to the file and extract the hyperlink of that file address. And then you can tell it, do XYZ on, and then /, and then you paste the file address that begins with HTTPS, and then you can target the file that way. So it's saying to me, I'm going to create a new presentation. I'm going to overwrite what's here, but that's fine because that's just a template. And then we go ahead and create that draft. So it is now analyzing the content of that document, and it is going to create a presentation.
The joys of live demos, Terence?
The joys of live demos. I was just going to say that that sometimes it doesn't work. It has a little funny 5, and then it tells you, I can't do this right now. In which case, you can just try again. In this case, it has come back and said, I've done it, but I'll need more practice before I can do everything. So what it's actually done quite successfully is it's extracted and created an agenda for me. It's generated that executive summary, and then it's gone a little bit higgledy-piggledy because it's put the tables with the figures on top of the text boxes, which leaves me with a little bit of drag and drop and maybe a bit of font resizing. But I still think this represents a significant time saving. I do have another one that I can show you, which is going to be a bit more impressive than this. I mean, I think sometimes we have really high expectations of what technology can do for us. And I see this when think about, for example, back in the day when you had to download music from the internet onto your iPod, and it took minutes to download a song. And these days, if you click it and it doesn't play straight away, you get a little bit annoyed. So it's early days with the tech. And when I sit back and think about how long it would have taken me to do this from scratch, I'm still pretty impressed. But I want to do one that's going to give a slightly better outcome. And with this one, it's a marketing trend report, again from a fictional company. So this company made protein shakes, and they've recently had a TikTok campaign go viral. And we want to generate a slide deck based on the metrics that we got back from our advertising agency. So it connects to that document, it analyzes the content. And what I wanted to show about this one is it's actually going to generate slides with images. Now, all of these images are not AI generated. They are part of a stock photo library that is licensed. So part of your Copilot license is you get access to this stock image library, where you can see that these are all pretty much on topic. They're all around fitness. If you get a slide that you don't quite like the look of, remember you can always use PowerPoint Designer to change the layout of the slide to align with the rest of the slides or to align with your corporate branding. So I just want to show you one more email-based demo. So this is where I've received an email from, and I don't want to put my whole mailbox on screen, so just bear with me while Outlook refreshes. And I'm just going to pop open that message, because Outlook is the one outlier really in the in the Copilot toolkit. Now, during so I'm double clicking the message, nothing's happening. Here we go. During the preview for Copilot, there was a Copilot button in Outlook. So you might have seen some videos and demos online of, go to your Copilot button, but we don't have one in Outlook anymore. They might put it back in, but for the time being, there isn't one. What we do have, though, is at the top of each email trail, we have a button, or a very long, thin button, a bar really, that says summarize. So if you click that, it goes through your whole email trail and it plays it back in the order of events. And I think this is particularly helpful for team leaders and managers where there might be an email conversation. You know, there's been email ping pong between somebody in your team and a customer. It's gone back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then it's maybe gone a bit, gone south a little bit, and it's now been escalated to you. And so what happens when you get escalated, they forward the whole email trail, and it's like, okay, boss, now you sort it out. So it's really handy to be able to get up to speed with a long and complex email trail through the summary. And it's basically just said to me exactly what happened. I asked Paula, can we use the slide decks? Can we give them to the customer? She said, yes, it's fine, but you need to do it after the workshop. If they want something before the workshop, here's a slide deck that you can share with them. And then I said, thank you. The other place we can deliver this kind of Copilot functionality inside of Outlook is when composing an email, but we have run out of time for that demo. So I'll hand back to Adam just to do, sorry, not quite yet. I'll do this quick wrap up, and then for the folks who can stay behind for Q&A, I'm here until 1 o'clock. But if you need to drop off, then you can do so. I just wanted to let you know that we have 3 workshop offerings. So if you wanted to understand more about how Copilot can help your company, we've got a variety of offerings ranging from a 1-day customer-funded workshop. And we then have 2 workshops which are funded by Microsoft for qualifying customers. So if you're interested, then do let us know. And your account manager or the sales representative will be assigned to follow up on that query for you. Awesome. So that's it from my side. Over to you, Adam, for any final thoughts, and then I'll have a look at the chat at the questions that have been posted there.
Yeah, so from the chat and the polls that we've launched, there's a few questions that have been raised. One is it possible to see the stats/analytics on an organization's usage of Copilot, i.e. how often users are using it and to what high level purposes, i.e. are they using it in Word, Excel, Teams, Outlook, etc.?
Yeah, there absolutely are. So you've got some out of the box adoption metrics, excuse me, that you can see. So folks are able to look at a very high level adoption metric, as well as breaking it down to tool specific metrics like, as you say, they're by PowerPoint, by Word and Excel. And then if you've got a Power BI premium license, there's an additional dashboard that you can download from Microsoft's website that gives you even more detailed adoption metrics. So Chris, hopefully that answers your question. I see we've got a question from Chris Stonen. Welcome on the call, Chris. Unfortunately, so I'm not sure if it's a question or a statement.
It's a statement, but I just wanted to just jump in on that one and say, sure. Actually, the requirements for the 3 and 5 day engagements are changing. Microsoft have recognised that the bar to entry is a little high at the moment, and why they haven't seen as much of an uptake as they thought they would. I'm not 100% sure when that's going to be, but they are lowering the barrier to entry.
Yeah.
Terence, I have an extra couple of questions, and this is probably just off the back of the polls. Is kind of, I suppose we've answered the question about next steps here, but is there anything else around kind of next steps for a business owner or a team lead within a business for Copilot? You know, what are the next steps for them to kind of really start this journey?
So I think probably the most important thing, and this is really aimed at organizational leaders, is to begin thinking about what your AI strategy is, because Copilot is just one slice of the pie. there are a lot of other AI capabilities and offerings that you could be thinking about. So where Copilot is very much designed to be a personal productivity tool, when you think about business problems that impact, for example, frontline workers. So these are folks who are likely using a frontline worker license if they have any formal IT provision at all. So these folks can't use Copilot because of the licensing restrictions, and probably wouldn't benefit from having an individual Copilot license. But there's stuff we can do to help them with our other AI offerings. So the first thing you really need to do as a business leader is plan out over the next 6 months, 12 months, 3, 5 years, what is your actual AI strategy? How much do you want to make AI part of the fabric of your organization? What are the things that you don't want to use AI for? We have a customer, for example, that is a legal firm, and they've got a list of tasks that they've already decided they won't use AI on. So, for example, a bail application for a client who's involved in a criminal case. Now, if word gets out that this company would have been using AI for a bail application, and the bail application fails, that means your customer is now sitting in jail, maybe because you used AI instead of doing the bail application yourself. So there's a strategic leadership decision over what are we not going to use AI for. Then what do we want to try use something like Copilot for personal productivity? And then what are things that actually we should be looking at something else like automation? We should be looking at the Power Platform, Power Apps, because AI is not really the solution to that business problem. So I think that's the first step, really, is that strategic thinking piece. And certainly doing a small Copilot pilot is part of that equation. So that's why we would encourage folks to think about something like our adoption accelerator, which is a small scale pilot exercise, so you can see for yourself how this product applies to your business.
Thank you, Terence. Just another couple of questions, but first of all, I just wanted to cover off something from Stuart. As I said at the start, this has been recorded later today. It will be uploaded to YouTube, and you will receive a link tomorrow for this particular recording. But just another question for you, Terence. Does Copilot Studio come with the Copilot M365 license, or is this an add-on? I'm interested in its chatbot building capabilities, for example.
Yeah. So the answer is it depends. There's basically two ways that you can consume Copilot Studio functionality. So if you have a Copilot for Microsoft 365 license, then anyone who is licensed for Copilot for Microsoft 365 can consume the product that you build with the Copilot Studio. So the Copilot Studio itself is a free download, but then whatever you build with it needs to be paid for in some way. So the folks who've got the Copilot for Microsoft 365 license are covered to use your custom Copilot Studio build as much as they like. For the people who aren't covered, for example, your frontline workers, there's a separate licensing model for them, not for them, for you to pay for the consumption of those AI services based on usage. So it's sort of per query, or per 10,000 queries, you pay a certain dollar fee. I don't know if those licensing figures off the top of my head, but that's something that we can come back to you on. So it's kind of a bit of both, depending who the end user is that's consuming the solution.
Thank you, Terence. And just something else I wanted to bring up was one of the polls was around their biggest concern in deploying Copilot, and as a resounding response was around security and compliance. So Would you be able to add any reassurance to the folks today around the security and compliance in Copilot and what that means to kind of their data with it that resides in their tenant?
Yeah. So Copilot is 100% secure and compliant. But the caveat is it's based on how you have permissioned your data. So I don't want to give you a false sense of security to say Copilot's never going to come back with an answer that it shouldn't, because you don't, because I can't predict how you've set data up. So this is where the Microsoft SharePoint restricted search is really so interesting for customers, because you can basically say, I want to lock search down, and it will only return results out of sites that I've put on an allow list. So if you are in an industry where data security and data sensitivity is sort of is top priority, and you're probably the kind of company that would have turned Delve off back in the day. So if you have that level of security posture, then the restricted search is going to be a great tool, because it then means you can set up a pristine SharePoint site with exactly the right permissions. You put the data you want people to access inside of that, and then that's the only thing Copilot can look at. So it depends where you are on that spectrum. But if your permissions are sorted out and you've got your compliance and labeling sorted out, then Copilot respects that 100%. If you're not sure, come talk to us about where you think those perceived risks lie.
So I guess, Terence, in summary, then it's secure in the fact that the data doesn't leave your tenant, but
Correct.
It's all dependent on your internal data security and how you treat that within your members of staff.
That's right. Yeah. The biggest risk is about internal oversharing.
Lovely. Okay, just another quick question. Are there any limitations or challenges to be aware of when using Microsoft Copilot? Bit of a broad and open question, that one.
So I think probably the biggest risk is failure to adopt. You know, this is a big financial commitment because of the fact that you currently have to pay up front. It's not a monthly model. So if you buy the licenses and your people don't use it, then you're burning money. And we've had feedback from a few customers who, shall we say, were very enthusiastic to get out and buy licenses in the beginning, but maybe didn't think through how we get people to use it. So I would say adoption is the crucial success factor. That would actually worry me a bit more than the security risk. Again, depending on your company's risk posture or your security posture.
Thank you, Terence. Is there any final questions, or shall we wrap up? Just give you a second or two to type away if you do. I'm gonna say no. I can't see anyone typing. So look, guys, thank you so much for your time today. Just to repeat, this has been recorded. It will be uploaded to YouTube, and the link to this will be sent to you separately, hopefully tomorrow. Just one final question right at the end there. Is Security Copilot separate? Yes, it will be. Very much so. And that will be in general release very shortly. And I'm sure we'll be doing some webinars and some demonstrations on that as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your time today. Have a great afternoon. And yeah, we hope to speak to you soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.